हेलो सौरभ और ख्याति, कैसे हैं आप?
बढ़िया प्रणय।
बस अच्छा।
कैसे हो तुम दोनों?
मैं तो ठीक हूँ। सौरभ, वैसे आपको याद है क्या, जब हम लोगों ने तक्षशिला से जीसीपीपी किया था, तो हम लोग हमेशा सोचते थे यार कोई एक ऐसी किताब नहीं है जिसमें भारत के उदाहरण हो या ऐसे उदाहरण हो जिससे हम लोग कनेक्ट कर पाए। ऐसे तो हम लोगों ने कई बार किताबों में पढ़ी थी, जैसे बोगोटा में कैसे पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट का प्रयोग होता है और भारत में क्यों नहीं होता। पर आपको एक कमी खलती होगी ना तब।
बिल्कुल, हम तो हमेशा बोलते थे ना कि अरे तक्षशिला का एक काम होना चाहिए कि भाई हिंदुस्तानी केस स्टडी बनाए, क्योंकि आप
हाँ,
केस स्टडीज सब विदेशों की केस स्टडी पढ़ते रहते हैं और उससे सोचते हैं कि चलो, और कॉन्टेक्स्ट से ही तो सब कुछ है, तो गड़बड़ तो बहुत कमी बहुत महसूस होती है। ख्याति तो रीसेंट स्टूडेंट है, अभी तक भी ऐसा ही हाल है ना ख्याति?
नहीं, मैंने तो टेक्स्ट बुक पढ़ ली है अभी।
अच्छा।
तो एक टेक्स्ट बुक आ गई है जो मैंने पढ़ी है एज़ अ टेक्स्ट
अरे
बुक
वाह।
इसमें। हाँ, जिसके
हाँ।
बारे में आज हम बातें करने वाले हैं।
यस, बिल्कुल। तो हम लोग आज उसी किताब पर बातें करने वाले हैं जो कि टेक्स्ट बुक से बहुत ज्यादा चीज है। उसमें कई सारे उदाहरण हैं भारत के बारे में, और एक नया नजरिया है भारत की लोक नीति को समझने के लिए। तो बहुत खुशी है मुझे कि हमारे साथ आज है प्रोफेसर अजय शाह। अगर आप भारतीय लोक नीति और पब्लिक पॉलिसी के बारे में थोड़ा भी जानते हो तो आपने प्रोफेसर शाह के बारे में जरूर सुना होगा। अजय एक्सकेडीआर फोरम के सह संस्थापक हैं और द ली ब्लॉग के भी संस्थापक हैं। तो अजय, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है पुलियाबाजी में।
थैंक यू।
और तुमने क्योंकि पहले उसकी बात की, तो सबसे पहले प्रणय, जब मैंने तो 2012 में पढ़ा था, राइट? तो तब भी हमको जब पूछा गया तो क्या क्या पढ़ना चाहिए, तो बोला जो भी अजय शाह लिखते हैं सब कुछ पढ़ लिया करो। तुम के बारे में कुछ समझ ना जाते। तो
अच्छा,
तो बहुत
बहुत
अच्छा लग रहा है कि आज वो पुलियाबाजी पर है।
बिल्कुल। तो शुरू करते हैं सीधा। तो हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं उनकी किताब जो कि डॉक्टर विजय केलकर के साथ उन्होंने लिखी है, इन सर्विस ऑफ द रिपब्लिक। तो उसका दूसरा संस्करण हालिया रिलीज हुआ है। तो उसी पर हम लोगों को चर्चा करनी थी और कई सवाल थे इस विषय पर। तो हम लोग उसी विषय पर आज बात करना चाहते हैं गहराई में, और समझना चाहते हैं कि भारतीय लोकनीति को और अच्छे से समझने का क्या जरिया है। तो शुरुआत करते हैं हम लोग सरकारी तंत्र, जिसे स्टेट कैपेसिटी कहते हैं, उसे बेहतर समझने की कोशिश करते हैं। तो अजय, आपकी किताब में स्टेट कैपेसिटी के बारे में काफी कुछ डिटेल्स दिए गए हैं। कैसे हम लोग उसे क्यों समझना जरूरी है, उसके क्या पैरामीटर्स होते हैं, ये सब आपने बताया इस किताब में। तो वहीं से शुरुआत करते हैं। जो ये सरकारी तंत्र की काबिलियत है, स्टेट कैपेसिटी, आपके हिसाब से इसे समझना क्यों जरूरी है?
Uh, we can think of state capacity in two ways. Uh, Mostly people think that if the government decides to do something, are they able to do it? Okay, so for example, if the government decides to send armed force into Sri Lanka, are they able to do it successfully or not? Okay, so this is one way of thinking about state capacity. If the government decides to do a polio vaccination program, are they able to cover everybody in the country? Okay, that is state capacity. That do you have the ability to do something? Okay, or
ठीक।
do you just fail? In India, what we know is most of the time the government decides to do something and they fail. So it is very interesting and very important. We could think of it in two ways: that if you know that you're going to fail, should you even try something? Okay, so are we better off having a mature understanding? Okay, this is possible, this is not possible. Why am I trying something that is beyond my reach? Okay, so can we be realistic about our capabilities? And if something is very difficult, maybe I should not even be trying it. And can I focus on a smaller number of things? That is one useful way to think about it. And then the other question is, can we increase the state capacity? So, okay, today the government of India does not have the ability to do certain things, but are there long-term actions that it is true in the short term, nothing can be done. In the short term, you cannot change state capacity. everywhere in the world, we have seen that increasing state capacity is 20 years, 50 years, 80 years stories. Nothing happens quickly. But fine, you don't have state capacity today. Can we become a little bit better? What can we do to become a little bit better in state capacity? Now, Kelkar and I have debated a lot about the narrow definition that you decide to do something and can you do it? You decide to do something, can you do it? And in the normal Western literature, they don't like to open the question that what is it that you decided to do. Okay, they tend to assume that the objective is fine, whatever be the objective that you chose, are you able to do it? We think that it is equally important to think of the decision processes and the debate and the political arrangements through which the decision is made that you want to do something. Okay, so imagine if I tell you that we have decided to do demonetization and the discussion can only be about how it was done. Okay, that would be a little incomplete. So imagine if we say that there are two separate problems. Putin has decided to invade Ukraine. And one state capacity question is, so were you able to conquer Kiev within 3 days or not? We think that it's actually equally relevant to ask the question, was it a good idea to decide to invade Ukraine? Okay, that is also a state capacity question. Now, many people in the West don't think like that. We think like that. We think that an equally important problem in India is what objectives have you chosen? Because very often in India, we choose wrong objectives, meaning the machinery of the government, of the political system, the debates, the way power is arranged, the power structure that generates a decision that let us go do X. That is equally a problem. And we have bad state capacity because we choose wrong objectives. So in our understanding of what we see in India, we don't get excited about the separation that I've decided to send an army into Sri Lanka and the only subject for debate is, did you win, did you not win? Okay, we think it's equally relevant to think, should you have sent an army into Sri Lanka? Okay, that is also part of the state capacity question. So what can we do in India to create the knowledge, the mechanisms, the capabilities, the bureaucracies, the political system, the configuration of power so that better decisions are made around objectives? And then part two, about how we have the operational and implementation capacity to actually win on a stated objective. All this is what we call state capacity.
तो बेसिकली औकात के बाहर की चीज ना करें तो अच्छा है, और लेकिन तो पहली बात तो वो है, और दूसरी ये कि चीजें फिर ऐसी चूज भी करना, लेकिन चीज चूज करने की औकात भी होनी चाहिए। वो आप कह रहे हैं कि वो भी एक इम्पोर्टेंट चीज है, क्योंकि वो कोई बाहर से तो नहीं आ रहा, ऑब्जेक्टिव भी तो हम खुद ही चूज करते हैं। तो हमको ही और वो चूज करने की भी जो प्रक्रिया है वो भी, उसके लिए भी बहुत मसल लगती है, औकात लगती है, वो भी होनी चाहिए। तो ये दोनों काबिलियत जो हैं वो इम्पोर्टेंट है। तो ये क्या अलग अलग तरह की काबिलियतें हैं आपको लगता है अजय, या ये एक ही काबिलियत है?
रिलेटेड। सो ये वेस्टर्न लिटरेचर में ऐसा आइडिया है कि जो डिसीजंस डेमोक्रेसी में लेते हैं वो डिसीजंस हमेशा लेजिटिमेट होती है और उसे कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं कर सकता है। तो लुकिंग इन इंडिया वी डोंट think that that's a useful approach. Okay, so there are many decisions. There are decision to pass a law, there's a decision to amend the constitution. Okay, this entire Indian political administrative system comes together to make a certain decision, and we think that that should equally be under debate and under scrutiny, that how did you decide to do something, and we the people should worry that are these decisions being made well. And we should think what kind of mechanisms of thinking, debate, and dispersion of power can generate better decisions around objectives.
तो बिल्कुल, मतलब सिर्फ जरिए के बारे में नहीं बल्कि उद्देश्य के बारे में भी हमें सोचना जरूरी है। तो वही काबिलियत को डिटरमिन करता है। तो लेकिन मेरे पास इससे जुड़ा हुआ एक सवाल था अजय, जैसे हम लोग अगर हम लोग स्टेट कैपेसिटी को थोड़ा एक एक्सट्रीम दिशा में ले जाए तो हम लोग चले जाते हैं 1950 के टाइम। हाँ, और 1950 के टाइम हम लोगों के पास सवाल है कि भारत को न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी करना है क्या, या स्पेस प्रोग्राम करना है क्या। और अगर हम लोग सिर्फ स्टेट कैपेसिटी की दृष्टिकोण से देखें तो क्या हम वो चीजें कर पाते, क्योंकि तब कई लोग ये भी बोल रहे थे कि क्यों ये कर रहे हो, ये हमारे औकात के बाहर है। तो इसको हम लोग कैसे इंक्लूड करें इस फ्रेमवर्क में?
और एक और इसमें मैं सप्लीमेंट्री जोड़ूं। मैं एक बार मैं और प्रणय बात कर रहे थे, मैं कह रहा भाई 1950 में हमने इसरो, बार्क, ये सब जैसे काम कर लिए, जब मतलब क्या था, हमारे देश की औकात कुछ भी नहीं थी। उससे अभी कैपेसिटी किसी भी पैमाने पे नापे, पैसे भी, कैपेसिटी भी 100-200 गुना, 1000 गुना ज्यादा है। और अब हम ऐसी चीजें सोचते हैं कि ये हमारे बस के बाहर हैं या हम नहीं कर सकते, और करते भी नहीं है। ऐसा तो नहीं है कि आजकल हम कर रहे हैं और तब हमने ऐसे बड़े बड़े चीजें करी। तो ये चीज भी आप कैसे देखते हैं?
So we should look at it in two ways. One is put yourself in the shoes of Nehru and others in 1950, and another is let us ask the same questions today. Okay, so let's start there. You are Jawaharlal Nehru, and you know that high quality scientific and engineering knowledge is supremely important for the country. So the argument would be that by putting public money into these kinds of objectives, we will end up creating scientists and engineers who will have a sustained impact all over the country, because we will create the knowledge, we'll create the people. So it is not nuclear energy that is that important, but it is the people that is that important. And by creating that knowledge, we will have spin-offs. So it was also argued at the time that maybe nuclear energy is important, maybe nuclear weapons are important, maybe putting satellites into outer space is important, and creating those people is important. Okay, so the argument would be that the benefits to society from creating those people is so great that it justifies the use of public money. And for a person like Nehru, they were able to see those amazing people like Vikram Sarabhai or Homi Bhabha, okay, who were just amazing, high quality people. And they could think that, if you back these people and you put public money behind them, then out of one Homi Bhabha, we will create 100 scientists, and that will be a great thing for the country. Okay? So this was the logic of 1950. Now, some parts of it worked and some parts of it have not worked. And, we respect and admire many of the decisions of those people. And it's difficult for us today to put ourselves in those shoes. Let me do something easier. Let us discuss today. Okay. Aaj, what would you think about space and about nuclear? Today, it is much less clear that you want to do these things on a large scale in a government establishment. Let's go piece by piece. Nuclear energy. Okay, the answer is broadly clear that the best nuclear power plants are made by foreign private firms. So just like we import gas turbines for a gas-fired plant, or we import foreign equipment for high-quality coal-fired plants, to get the lowest cost per unit, the wise thing to do is to import nuclear reactors. Okay, domestic reactors are not of sufficient quality, and we should not do self-reliance. Okay, we should always buy the cheapest advanced technology. So, for example, in the last 1 year, in the United States, the safety licenses have been given to design of a nuclear reactor, which is a 50 megawatt plant. So it's a small nuclear reactor. Yeah, एक factory के बाजू में आप डाल सकते हो 50 megawatt बस. Okay, and this is amazing technology which is not there in India. So if your objective was nuclear generation, then I'm not convinced that self-reliance has worked. In fact, it has not worked. Domestic reactors are substandard. Domestic reactors are not of adequate quality. The best reactors are imported, and so I have done careful calculations. The cost per unit of domestic reactors is about double compared to cost per unit of imported reactors. So if you're buying a coal thermal plant, we are buying imported equipment. If you buy a gas-fired plant, we're buying imported equipment. So what is special about a nuclear plant? We should buy the best equipment. Okay. Point 2, you want to do nuclear weapons? By all means, there should be a defense facility. which will make nuclear weapons. Okay, I'm all for it. But let's not mix up nuclear energy and nuclear bombs. Okay, they're two separate problems. Yes, India needs self-reliance in nuclear bombs, and there is no great connection between making nuclear bombs and nuclear energy. The next problem is in a problem like space. So now, why do we have a space program? You can say because we want to put satellites up in space. Well, go to SpaceX, they'll launch your satellite. Okay, so there are plenty of global companies who will make a satellite, who will launch a satellite, and there's no great reason for vast expenses from 1947 till today. So if you actually count the money that has gone into ISRO and the money that goes into ISRO every year, and if ISRO had to stand on its own feet and compete as a satellite launching capability, it is probably not efficient. So I'm not convinced that you should be putting public money into ISRO. Whatever, again, you want a small military program.
नहीं पर अजय ये नहीं है कि हमको वही सेम चीज करने चाहिए ना, मतलब वो तो है कि उस समय वो शायद ठीक थी, अभी तो नहीं है, अभी शायद कुछ और होंगी.
Agree completely. The discussion in 1950 is different from the discussion of today. So for 1950,
आज के हालात अलग है.
Correct. So for 1950, they saw a world. We admire those people. They made some amazing decisions. And I would not jump to criticize them because, the world looks different today. But standing today, what should you be doing is a matter which we can debate. Four of us on this call, we have the complete information today and the world has changed. So my biggest problem with ISRO today is the extent to which the public funding goes into some scientists who are sitting inside ISRO. Whereas a far more productive approach to getting these things done is to give out contracts to the private sector. So you look at NASA. NASA doesn't actually build the spacecraft. They give out contracts to private people. And then those private people build the spacecraft. And because of that, the scientific and engineering knowledge is created amongst private people. So the entire private sector, the entire economy, all the universities in the country benefit from those knowledge spillovers. That is what justifies the public expenditure inside a NASA. Otherwise, there's no value in sending a rocket to the moon. So just having a Sarkari employee sending a rocket to the moon does not benefit India. India is the people of India is the private sector. So the whole mechanism we are using in ISRO of hiring people inside ISRO is not very effective in generating benefits for the country.
हाँ, और वैसे इत्तेफाकन आज हम लोग रिकॉर्ड कर रहे हैं, आज के दिन ही स्काई रूट एरोस्पेस जो कि एक प्राइवेट कंपनी है, उन्होंने अपना पहला रॉकेट लॉन्च किया जो कि सक्सेसफुल था. तो ये एक बदलाव शायद आ रहा है कि इसरो में ही भारत का स्पेस सेक्टर लिमिटेड ना हो, और लिबरलाइजेशन हुआ था 2020 में, और उसके बाद कुछ बदलाव आ रहे हैं. तो शायद हम लोग देख रहे हैं कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर को बढ़ावा देने की जरूरत है, वो शायद सरकार भी समझ रही है.
Two parts. First is, it is not correct for the government to ban a private person from putting a rocket in the sky. Okay, that is just not on. How dare you tell me that I can't put a rocket? Okay, so yeah, I should not harm a farmer sitting next to me. But apart from that, this government ban on all private activities is not correct. And second, a lot of public money is going into ISRO. Okay, we've got to ask questions, bang for the buck. So it's not clear to me that that's a great use of public money. If ISRO primarily did contracting and the work of building an engine, of building a satellite, went out to private universities and private firms, then there would be a spillovers argument that private scientists and engineers are developing knowledge based on the public money, and then that knowledge will go back into building better firms and better products and better processes and export competitiveness. Then that would be a reason for the public money. Otherwise, just taking taxpayer money and putting a craft to Mars, sorry, I'm not convinced it's a good idea.
तो अजय, आज के संदर्भ में अगर हमें ये एक, आपने बोला ना कि ये डिसीजन भी बहुत जरूरी है, ये समझना कि सरकार को क्या करना चाहिए और क्या नहीं करना चाहिए, क्या ऑब्जेक्टिव उसका होना चाहिए और क्या नहीं होना चाहिए. तो इसको सोचने के लिए क्या फ्रेमवर्क है जो आप अपने हमारे लिसनर्स को बता सकते हैं कि हम इस क्वेश्चन के बारे में, क्योंकि जैसे अगर आपने इसरो का बताया या न्यूक्लियर का बताया, तो वो फिर भी थोड़ा लोग आसानी से कह सकते हैं कि ये थोड़ी टर्शरी फील्ड्स है, मे बी आप एकदम कोर फील्ड्स नहीं मान सकते हो स्टेट की, लेकिन उसके अलावा भी बहुत चीजें हैं जो हम एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं ना कि हमारी सरकारें करें, कि हमारी सरकारें ये भी करनी चाहिए, वो भी करनी चाहिए, तो हम बहुत कुछ एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं. और हमारी सरकार ये सब करने की कोशिश भी करती है, बट कहीं ना कहीं वो जितने अच्छे से करना चाहिए उतना वो कर नहीं पा रहे हैं। तो ये एक सवाल के लिए आप क्या फ्रेमवर्क हम सोच सकते हैं इसको आगे?
तो मेरा आइडिया है कि there are 3 parts of the framework. Okay, so the first part of the framework is whatever parents do, government should never do. Okay, so if you have children and you want to bring up a child properly, the child should work hard, the child should not be lazy, you want the child to not smoke, you want the child to not drink. Okay, whatever parents do, government should never do. Okay, the family should be a boundary that never allow a government to come inside the house. Okay, so that is the first principle, that never ask a government to do what parents do. Okay, so that should be the birthright of parents and only parents. And my mother can tell me certain things, no government should ever tell me certain things. Okay,
सरकार माई बाप नहीं है.
तो माई बाप है और सरकार है.
लेकिन यहाँ मैं बोलूंगा ना, कई बार माँ बाप लोग ही परेशान हुए, अरे मेरे बच्चे को कोई समझावा के.
But then you bring your uncle, you bring your neighbor, but don't bring sarkar. Okay, so that is the first principle. Okay, the second is that start from a baseline of 0. Okay, our first idea should be कि सरकार कुछ नहीं करेगी. Okay, now where will you bring in a government? Now you come to principle number 3. एक technical term है market failure. तो 4 जात के market failures होते हैं, और when you can see a market failure in the world, that is the reason to bring the government, और उसके अलावा there should be no reason to bring government. तो ये nuclear और space की discussion हमने जो की, the argument I was using was a kind of market failure, that when we do space development, and if contracts go out to private people, out in the universities, out in the private universities, out in the private firms, then there is a spillover of knowledge to everybody. So the firms become stronger, the firms become more capable, the firms become more scientifically advanced, and then the quality of the products goes up, the export capability goes up. All these are benefits that accrue to the larger society. This has a technical name, it's called a market failure. So the case for government is when there is a market failure. Otherwise, there is no case for government. So, normally there should be freedom. There should be no interference in our work. So, for example, if a government tells me that you are banned from putting a rocket in space, I have a very big problem with that. How dare you? Who are you? Okay, I'm a free person. This is my country. I should be free to put a rocket in the country, to put a rocket out into space. So, we should be very careful about the words freedom. All too often in India, governments recklessly take away our freedom. So we should be very cautious about anything that a government is doing. Governments tend to remove our freedom, and they tend to take tax money and spend it in all kinds of ways. So, as I said, 3 principles. Principle 1, never bring a government to do what parents do. Principle number 2, by default, a government should do nothing, and particularly not interfere in our freedom. And principle 3, if you are willing to use a government to interfere in the lives of the people and do something, there should be a market failure argument. And also, we were just there a moment ago, you should have the state capacity. That we should not set up audacious goals which are beyond the capability of the Indian state. We should be modest. We should understand that the government systems, the administration is very low capability. We are a third world country. We are a developing country. We have very low capabilities. Simple things can't be done in India. So you can see great things being done in Germany or Sweden. That doesn't mean you can do them in India. So you should be cautious that we have low capabilities, and there should be a market failure. You should not interfere in freedom. That is the case for using the state.
बिल्कुल. तो ये जैसा आपने कहा, तो ये पॉजिटिव एक्सटर्नैलिटी हुआ ना, जो आपने उदाहरण दिए थे स्पेस सेक्टर का. अगर हम लोग निजी क्षेत्र में उसका बढ़ावा होगा तो वो एक तरह का मार्केट फेलियर है, और इसीलिए सरकार का कुछ तरीके का इंटरवेंशन जायज है, लेकिन वो भी एक तरीके का होना चाहिए.
You have to do the calculations. Let me show you another example. Okay, suppose I am an Indian company and I want to buy satellite imagery from a Norwegian company. Okay, so normally you would think, yeah, sure, go buy whatever you want. No, government of India will not allow that. Step 1, it is banned. Okay, step 2, there is a monopoly Indian PSU. Only the Indian PSU is authorized to buy satellite data from any foreign company. So I have to go to this Indian company. I have to take their permission. It's a PSU. It's a monopoly. I have to take their permission. Then I have to pay them the money. Then they will buy the imagery from a Norwegian company, and then they will give me that imagery. This is nonsense. Okay,
Yeah.
who are you? Who are you to interfere with me? Okay, I can go start a company in Singapore. I'll buy that satellite imagery from a Norwegian company, and I'm done. Okay, if you think that we have enemies in China, they will buy that imagery from the Norwegian company, and they are done. If you think I'm a terrorist sitting somewhere in the world, I will buy the imagery from the Norwegian company, and I'm done. The only person who is prevented from buying the imagery from a Norwegian company is some bloke sitting in India. So this reduction of freedom is a really bad thing, which is being done in India all the time.
बिल्कुल, हाँ, और ये तो हो ही रहा है ना एक्चुअली। अभी कई सारे भारत के जो निजी क्षेत्र में स्पेस कंपनियां हैं, वो जो आप बोल रहे हैं वैसे ही हो रहा है, सिंगापुर में स्थापित हैं, यूएस में, क्योंकि इसी कारण की वजह से। तो ठीक है, आगे बढ़ते हैं। तो हम लोग ये सवाल भी पूछना चाहते थे, आपकी किताब में कई तरीके से बताया गया है कि क्यों जो भारतीय सरकारें साफ मन से भी नीतियां लाती है वो अक्सर फेल हो जाती हैं। तो एक तो कारण जैसे आपने बताया, ऑब्जेक्टिव्स ही हम लोग गलत चूज कर रहे हैं, लेकिन आपने और भी उदाहरण दिए हैं कि क्यों भारत की सरकारें ये नीतियां एग्जीक्यूट करने में फेल हो जाती हैं। तो क्या है वो कारण?
तो गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर में छोटा सा काम होगा तो it is very difficult to get it correctly. So we have to fundamentally understand that governments are not capable, governments are not competent. Okay, so we have got to fundamentally understand that it is very difficult doing anything in the government sectors. The simple things that you and I can do as individuals, the simple things that we can do in a private company is very difficult to do in a government sector. And this is true everywhere in the world. It's not the fault of government of India. We've just got to wake up that don't assume that a government is capable. Now, why are there difficulties in a government sector? So there's a big organization. There is a management problem. There are thousands of people. Okay, everybody has job security. Nobody's going to lose their job. Okay, there are no bonuses. There is no incentive for doing any work. So why should a civil servant do any work? Okay, so they will not do any work, or they will do things that will favor their friends and family. Okay, so when we say corruption, we tend to always think suitcases of cash. That is not correct. Okay, corruption is when work is not done in a professionally sound way. When work is done by the individual to favor their own objectives or their own career. Okay, so when a civil servant will support and encourage the filing of an FIR against an opposition party, that is corruption, because that civil servant is doing it to benefit herself, to benefit her own career. Okay, so we should not think that corruption is about suitcases of cash. Yes, it is about suitcases of cash, but it's much more. When work is not done for professional objectives to pursue the objectives of the organization, and instead, when work is done by a civil servant to pursue personal objectives of my own career and my own advancement and my own power and to benefit my own friends and family, that is corruption. Okay, and corruption is pervasive in government structures, that people have no incentive to do the work of the organization, and it is very difficult to monitor people and get correct work out of them. So it is very difficult to run a government system properly. So even in a private organization, if you have 1,000 employees, it's very difficult to make sure that the employees are working for the objectives of the company and not their own personal objectives. Well, that problem is 100x worse in a government setting. Now, in a private company, you have a simple number market share. You have a simple number profit. Okay, so if a private organization starts being mismanaged, if the individuals inside a private company will become lazy or corrupt, then it will have an impact on the market share of the company, on the profit of the company, on the share price of the company. Okay, so generally in every company, you have a monthly statement of your market share. You have a quarterly statement of your profit coming out to the shareholders, and you have a daily report card of your stock price. Okay, in the world of government, there is nothing. There is no accountability. There is no measurement. Okay, so is the Bombay police doing a good job? Are they doing a bad job? Who knows? Okay, there is no measurement. There is no feedback loop. There is no accountability. Okay, and everybody is scared of the police. So if you happen to meet anybody in the Bombay police, you have a private incentive to praise them. You will say, "Oh, sir, you're doing such a great job." Okay? So civil servants always hear praise. They always hear positive feedback. Everybody will suck up to a civil servant saying, "Oh, everything is great. things are so wonderful. Just I want one favor for myself. Okay, so the people
पता नहीं ना
who
कब
make up,
जरूरत पड़ जाए भाई.
correct. So the people who make the state, which is politicians and officials, have a distorted reality perception where they think everything is great. We are so good. We get praised every day. If I have a supportive media, then the media will keep on saying good things about me. Sir, you looked so good on television the other day. Okay, things like that. Whereas actually, it is very difficult to do work. It is very difficult to build a large, complex organization. It's very difficult to overcome all these conflicts of why should an employee work for the objectives of the organization, and to actually get state organizations that work well. Okay, so we in India, for example, think of Survey of India, which is supposed to make maps. Okay, now 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years go by, and Survey of India does not survey the ground and obtain modern maps of the country. And this just goes on. So in any other country, you have maps that are 2 years old, 4 years old. But in India, you have maps that are 40 years old, 60 years old. There are some regions of the country where there has been no survey for 50 years. Okay, that's the Indian Survey of India. Now, how do you create the competence, the capability, the feedback loops, the accountability, the capability of actually surveying India properly and making high quality maps? It's very difficult.
आई थिंक हमारे मतलब एज अ सोसाइटी इवन मतलब पॉलिटिशियंस को भूल जाइए, इवन एज सोसाइटी हमें ज्यादा अप्रिसिएशन नहीं है कि एक इंस्टीट्यूशन का क्या वैल्यू है, कि ये सारे इंस्टीट्यूशंस क्यों बनने चाहिए या क्यों स्ट्रेंथन होने चाहिए. तो आई थिंक हम उसकी डिमांड भी थोड़ी कम करते हैं. हम सोचते हैं कि कोई एक बड़ा इंसान, एक अच्छा बेनेवोलेंट पॉलिटिशियन आ जाएगा और वो अच्छे डिसीजन ले लेगा तो हमारे ये सारे प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाएंगे. तो हम वो इंस्टीट्यूशन बिल्डिंग के ऊपर जो पूरे समय ध्यान देना चाहिए कि मतलब कांस्टेंट प्रोसेस होना चाहिए, आई थिंक उसको हम बहुत ही हल्के में ले लेते हैं कि वो सोचते हैं कि वो तो होता ही रहेगा टाइप का. ऐसे वी टेक इट फॉर ग्रांटेड.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, what you're saying is perfect, that we went from kings to the British, okay, where we are subjects and not citizens. We have no say. We are not first class participants of a democracy. We're just crushed by some ruler, and the ruler at their whim can destroy my life, and that's okay. Okay, and we brought that approach to the Indian state. The Indian state has a colonial autocratic DNA where the state believes that they have all the power and they can crush and destroy any of us anytime they want. We are subjects and not citizens. We have very little freedom. We have accepted that. We have normalized oppression. We have become comfortable with the absence of freedom, with the absence of the place of an individual in a democracy.
बिल्कुल. तो हम लोग आगे बढ़ते हैं इस सवाल पर कि जो काबिलियत है उसे बेहतर कैसे कर सकते हैं. तो जैसे आपने लिखा है कि किस तरीके से भारतीय सरकारें कुछ चीजें ठीक ठाक कर लेती है और कुछ चीजें ठीक ठाक नहीं कर पाती. तो उसके आपने से जो 4 पैरामीटर्स दिए थे, कुछ चीजें डिस्क्रिशन पे या ट्रांजैक्शन इंटेंसिटी पे, तो उसके बारे में कुछ बताइए ना. कौन सी ऐसी चीजें हैं जहां पर काबिलियत बढ़ाना ज्यादा मुश्किल है कंपेयर टू द अदर थिंग्स.
तो अगर हम एक प्रॉब्लम लेते हैं जैसे है कोविड की वैक्सीनेशन, एंड सपोज वी हैव टू फॉर्म अ जजमेंट कि ये कितना आसान है, ये कितना डिफिकल्ट है. ओके, तो 4 क्वेश्चंस है. क्वेश्चन 1, हाई नंबर ऑफ ट्रांजैक्शंस, लो नंबर ऑफ ट्रांजैक्शंस. अगर मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी, इंटरेस्ट रेट सेटिंग डिसीजन करनी हो तो बरस में 4 बार 6 बार कुछ काम करना है. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट देयर इज नो वर्क. Okay, so it's a very easy thing. और अगर पोलियो वैक्सीनेशन करनी हो तो you have to vaccinate 1.4 billion people. Okay, so that's a large number of transactions. That is more difficult. So that is question 1. High transactions, low transactions. Okay, question 2. Discretion. High discretion, low discretion. So if you are a policeman, if you are a employee of the tax department, if you are an employee of SEBI, you have a lot of discretion. Can you make trouble for somebody? Can you be kind to somebody? Whereas if you're doing polio vaccination, you have no discretion. With every child, you open the mouth of the child and you put drops of the polio vaccine. So when there is high discretion, it is more difficult because there will be more corruption. That the individual inside the government will use that discretion of whether to investigate somebody, whether to prosecute somebody, whether to harm somebody. Individuals will use that power to benefit themselves. They will harm some individuals. They will support some individuals based on their own attempt at gaining power and getting promoted and helping their friends and family. Okay, so there is a greater problem when there is discretion. Whereas in something like a polio vaccination, there's no discretion. The caseworker just goes house to house, finds any child, opens the mouth of the child, and dribs the vaccine. There's no discretion. You can't harm a person, not harm a person. There's no power. We don't look at a polio vaccine worker as a very dangerous, important person where I should send a Diwali gift. Whereas we think of an income tax officer as a very important, dangerous person, and I should stay on their good side. Okay. The third test is what is at stake. Okay, what is at stake means that if a polio worker will do their work correctly or not, at worst, my child will be vaccinated or not. Whereas if a policeman will enforce against a murderer, that person can go to jail for 20 years or not. Okay, if a policeman will go after an innocent person, they can be put into jail. The way India works is you don't have to be convicted. You can be sent off to jail even when you're completely innocent. So the police, the ED, the CBI, they can destroy the life of an individual. So the stakes are very high. Now the threat point is greater. So the danger of misbehavior is greater when the threat point is higher. So the threat of investigating a person, the threat of what a tax department can do, the threat of what a criminal justice can do, the threat of what a judge can do, the stakes are very high. So those are more difficult. When the stakes are low, these things are easier. So for example, you want to run a government school, then either the teacher will actually do the work of teaching or the teacher will not do the work of teaching. The stakes are low. I mean, when the teacher teaches, then yeah, we get some teaching done, and the teacher does not teach. The teacher is stealing some 25,000 rupees a month of the salary, and there is no teaching. So the stakes are relatively low. So that is the third dimension, that when the stakes are high, it is very difficult to make a civil servant do their work correctly or to make the politician do their work correctly. Finally, fourth is the amount of secrecy. So if things are done out in the open, then there is more debate, more discussion, more data, more democratic criticism, more media criticism, more research papers, more difficulty for incompetence. So there is a feedback loop. There is a accountability mechanism that when things are done in the open, then there is a greater chance that bad behavior and non-performance will be seen, will be criticized, will generate pressure upon the civil servant or the government organization to do their job. Whereas when things are done in secrecy, then it's a black hole and you don't know what is going on and anything can be done. So, for example, in military affairs, for example, in RAW, for example, in the investigations and prosecutions that are conducted by all the various government agencies, they happen in complete secrecy. So they have all the power, they have all the discretion, there is no checks and balances, there is no external visibility on what is going wrong. So things will go very wrong. So wherever there is secrecy, things will go more wrong. So these are the four dimensions. If somebody shows you a problem that let us go do X, then you can apply these four rules and you can determine, is this easy, is it difficult?
Right.
बिल्कुल, इसमें मुझे एक और उदाहरण याद है, जो जब आप सीक्रेसी की बात कर रहे थे, गोपनीयता की, तो जैसे हम लोगों को अब तक ये भी नहीं पता है कि भारतीय सेना में कितने पेंशनर्स हैं, इसका एग्जैक्ट नंबर सरकार नहीं डालती है। तो हमें ये इतना फंडामेंटल नंबर ही नहीं पता होगा, तो हम लोग किस तरीके से OROP सही है नहीं सही है जो भी है उसका एनालिसिस कैसे करेंगे अगर इतना सीक्रेसी होगा इस विषय पर? तो ये कैसा ही उदाहरण था।
तो इससे एक और चीज निकल के आती है, क्योंकि हम काफी स्टेट कैपेसिटी की बात भी कर रहे हैं कि भाई औकात के अंदर की चीज करनी चाहिए। तो अजय, एक आपका चैप्टर बुक में इस पे भी है कि क्योंकि कम अगर कैपेसिटी है तो फिर उसके हिसाब से आपकी नीति भी बदल जाती है। तो भाई आपने चूज तो कुछ किया, तो आपको जैसे अगर भाई कोई दुबला पतला आदमी है तो फिर वो सुमो नहीं, रेसलर नहीं बनेगा ना, जूडो खेलेंगे आपकी, आप भाई दूसरे की क्या कहते हैं वजन का फायदा उठाइए। आप सुमो खेलने जाएंगे तो फिर आप क्रश हो जाएंगे। तो फिर आप अपने औकात के हिसाब से गेम चूज करते हैं, स्ट्रेटेजी चूज करते हैं। तो ये इसका कुछ उदाहरण दीजिए कि कब सुमो खेलना और कब जूडो खेलना।
तो ये एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है। हम जर्मनी को देखते हैं, हम स्वीडन को देखते हैं, और वी ट्राई टू इंपोर्ट देयर आइडियाज एंड देयर प्रैक्टिसेस, एंड दैट विल नेवर वर्क, because we are a different country, we are a different setting. A lot of the machinery of the state does not work. We call it invisible infrastructure. ये बहुत invisible infrastructure missing hai, or we have to rethink in new ways. So I think the biggest lesson is do less things. Don't try 100 things. Okay, we fail at all the 100 things. Can we do 5 things? Okay, so can we pick a very small number of things and then put concentration and put focus, and then over 10, 20, 50 years we will learn how to do a few things. तो अगर हम हिस्ट्री में देखते हैं, यूरोप में जब स्टेट कैपेसिटी की इमर्जेंस हुई, it was a world where governments basically did only one thing: they waged war. Okay, और कुछ काम नहीं था. तो what makes a country win on the problems of military power? Okay, तो ये 3 चीजें हैं. First, you have to have high GDP. Okay, there has to be science and technology and firms and a market economy in the country so that you get to high GDP. Second, you need to build a good tax system so that the government is able to raise money from the economy. Okay, so if you have a bad tax system, you will get less money. Third, the government has to have the ability to spend that money and build a military organization. For example, the government has to have the procurement capacity to be able to buy a Rafale fighter using that money. Okay, so these are the 3 things which happened successfully in the countries that emerged. So what England did correctly, what Germany did correctly, was that they developed these 3 pieces. That there was a market economy, there were sophisticated firms, there was science and technology in the country, so the GDP came. Then they developed a fiscal system, so they learned how to tax it. So by the way, all the way till 1913, the taxation in the UK was only 10%. The tax GDP ratio of the UK was only 10%. You don't try to build a big government, you build a very small government. Okay, so Britain was the most powerful country of the world. They were ruling half of the world. The sun never set on the British Empire. Britannia rules the waves. All those things on 10% of GDP. You don't need more money than that. Okay, so you take a limited amount of money using a properly designed tax system. Okay, and then you learn how to spend it correctly. So you build the management systems of hiring, firing, of procuring, of getting private companies to do the work that should be done inside military problems, and so on. And so we should be looking for a very small number of problems, and we should learn how to build a capable state. And that's a 50-year project. Nothing will be done quickly. This is not 5 months. This is not 5 years. This is a 50-year journey to become a sophisticated economy. And then once you learn how to be a state, then you can do many other things. And then we can think one day of being like Sweden or being like the UK. Our journey today is we are about 100 years behind advanced economies. So we have to do very basic things. We have to learn how to be a state in terms of very simple things.
तो अजय, इसमें मुझे एक बहुत ये चुनौतीपूर्ण रहता है मेरे लिए भी जब हम लोग डिस्कस करते हैं पब्लिक पॉलिसी स्टूडेंट्स के साथ वगैरह, क्योंकि जैसे आज का जो इंसान है वो एक वैश्विक इकोसिस्टम में है जहां पर हमेशा जो नेटफ्लिक्स देख रहा है वो यूएस की चीज देख रहा है, या फिर ट्विटर पे है वो देख रहा है कि यूएस में क्या इकोसिस्टम है. तो जो सवाल हैं और जो जवाब हैं वो नेचुरली वहां से जुड़े होते हैं. और अब जैसा आपने की बताया कि 1913 तक टैक्स जीडीपी रेशियो कम था, लेकिन सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वॉर के बाद तो सभी देशों का टैक्स टू जीडीपी रेशियो बढ़ा है. और
सभी एडवांस इकोनॉमीज का.
एडवांस, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल. तो अक्सर लोग उसको देखकर बोलते हैं यार वो लोग कर रहे हैं तो हम लोग क्यों नहीं करते हैं, और हम लोग को क्यों वेट करना है और 100 साल. तो इसका जवाब हम लोग कैसे दें? What will be the best answer to this question which can convince more people?
It was said very well just now कि तुम sumo wrestler अभी तक नहीं हुए. Okay, we've just got to be honest and recognize that we are not there. And also we've got to constantly emphasize the differences in the setting. That UK में बहुत अच्छी चीज है national health system. Okay, the NHS is a beautiful system. I admire them. But that doesn't mean you can do it in India. Okay, so just mechanically transplanting ideas from what works in an advanced economy is a very wrong way to approach what we should be doing in India. we have to be authentic. We have to look in our reality. We have to grow up here in this country. We have to understand this country. We have to be loyal to the challenges and the problems of this country. We have to be useful in this country. We have to make a contribution to solving problems in this country, in this reality. So I feel, many times people like us, we read books about foreign countries, we read blogs in foreign countries, and we lose sight of the differences between what is our reality and what is going on elsewhere in the world. So, by the way,
मैंने एक बार एक यूजफुल चीज मैंने एटलीस्ट जो देखी है, सॉरी बोलिए जी.
If I may just finish, people get shocked at the idea that India is about 100 years behind. We've got used to the idea. No, we are almost done. We're like 10, 20 years behind the advanced economies. This is absolutely not true. We're about 100 years behind the advanced economies, maybe more if you define in certain ways. So if you think some rule of law, would you rather be caught by a policeman and be accused of a crime in London in 1922 versus India in 2022? Okay, I would unhesitatingly pick London in 1922. Okay? We are more than 100 years behind on the basics of civilization, of police and courts.
So that is what we should, मतलब वो हमें ज्यादा फोकस करना चाहिए, क्योंकि हमने वो हमारे बेसिक्स ही अभी ठीक नहीं हुए हैं और हम आगे बहुत सोच रहे हैं, लेकिन हमारे वो जब तक वो हम नहीं कर पाएंगे तो हमारा बेस ही नहीं बनेगा आगे हम बढ़ने के लिए.
इसमें मैं बस एक ही चीज, एक अजय ने जो बोली, मैं अक्सर प्रणय ट्राई करता हूँ कि भाई वो जो 100 साल वाली बात मुझे तो काफी ठीक लगती है कि हमें सोचना चाहिए कि अमेरिका 1920 में क्या कर रहा था और उससे हमें इंस्पिरेशन लेनी चाहिए, है ना. जैसे हम अपनी स्टार्टअप की दुनिया में भी बोलते हैं, लोग कहते हैं कि एप्पल ये कर रहा था. हाँ, मैं कहता हूँ वो ठीक बात है, पर तुम ये सोचो कि एप्पल 1980 में क्या कर रहा था, क्योंकि तुम उस जगह पर हो अभी. तुम अभी ये नहीं सोच सकते कि एज स्टार्टअप कि भाई मैं अभी एक स्टार्टअप हूँ और मैं वही सब करूंगा जो आज की डेट में एप्पल करता है और बस मैं तो बड़ी कंपनी बन जाऊंगा. ऐसा तो नहीं होता ना. आप शुरू करते हो तो आप ये सोचते हो कि एप्पल ने 1980 में क्या किया था, माइक्रोसॉफ्ट ने 1977 में क्या किया था, और फिर आप सोचते हो हाँ मैं उससे इंस्पिरेशन लूं. तो हमको भी इंस्पिरेशन लेना चाहिए कि भाई अमेरिका, यूके 1915, 1920 में क्या कर रहे थे और वो हमको स्टडी करना चाहिए और ज्यादा.
Absolutely perfect. And you should go further back into history. The United States Constitution is, late 1700s, and there were things that were done in the Constitution that have protected that country and which, we don't have in our legal tradition, which have made a huge difference. Similarly, let me give you a simple example. There is a doctrine that is called fruit of the poisonous tree. Okay, so let me give you an example. That we say before a policeman can enter your house, he has to have a warrant. Okay, it's a fundamental principle that my house is my castle, my house is my fortress, and nobody can come into my house. Okay, so if Sarkar wants to come into my house, they have to first go to a judge, get the permission, get a warrant, and come into my house. Okay, now suppose a policeman says that I illegally broke into the house and I found a murder weapon. Okay, so the policeman illegally broke into the house without a warrant and correctly found the murderer. Okay? Now what should you do? So we have to think a little that is the policeman some kind of Superman or Batman who is solving crimes, or is the policeman a normal human being trying to maximize her power and do favors to friends and family? Because if you start saying that breaking into a house by a policeman is okay, then all hell breaks loose and all warrants become dispensable, because then the policeman will stop caring about the warrant. Okay, this is called fruit of the poisonous tree, that if the tree is poisonous, that fruit is not allowed. So the courts in advanced economies have all established this idea that how evidence is gathered is non-negotiable. If there is a rule that the policeman has to get a warrant before he enters your house, then if that rule is violated, the policeman will be punished and that evidence will not be usable in court, even if the person is guilty. Okay. Now, this rule came into American law only in the 1930s. Okay. So they got freedom in 1776. What I have described is such a fundamental idea in the working of any free country. Okay. Otherwise, you live in a police state. This fundamental idea came only in the 1930s. So it takes a very long time to solve all these things. And we in India have not yet done this. Okay. So this is our battle. Basics of taking away the power of a policeman to break into your house. These are the basic things that we are doing in India today.
इसी में थोड़ा-सा मैं ये जोड़ना चाहती हूँ कि जो आपने समझाया, उससे भी हम एक स्टेप थोड़ा और पीछे हैं, क्योंकि हम तो ये भी नहीं, मतलब एज़ अ सोसाइटी भी हम शायद समझते नहीं हैं कि अगर किसी ने कोई क्राइम किया है, तो उसका एक सही तरीका उस क्राइम को एड्रेस करने का ये है कि उसके ऊपर एक जुडिशरी में एक प्रॉपर ट्रायल हो उसका, और उसके बाद उसको कन्विक्शन हो, राइट? हमारे में जैसे अभी कुछ साल पहले जब हैदराबाद में एक रेप केस हुआ था, तो उसके कुछ ही, क्योंकि वो बहुत ही हाई प्रोफाइल केस बन चुका था, तो 3-4 दिनों के बाद उसके कुछ जो अक्यूज़ थे, उनको लेके एक एनकाउंटर हो चुका था और काफ़ी लोगों ने उसका बहुत ही सपोर्ट किया था। तो आई थिंक हम ये समझ ही नहीं पाए हैं अभी तक, तो आई थिंक ये बहुत सारा हमें डिस्कोर्स की ज़रूरत है, और कि हम वहाँ तक पहुँचे कि ये प्रोसेसेस क्यों ज़रूरी है हमारे लिए, एक तरीके से।
So this is again like the foundations of democracy, that if you think that there is a ruler and I am obedient, then you lost the game. Okay. In democracy, we are citizens and we have rights. And that whole framework is just fundamentally missing in our conception of the state and society and the people. And that's why Kelkar and I believe that one of the most important words that is missing in the Indian discourse is the word freedom. Freedom is very important. Just because we replace the British by Indian rulers, it doesn't mean you got freedom.
बिल्कुल, हाँ सही बात बोली आपने। हम नागरिक है, प्रजागण थोड़ी ना है अभी, लेकिन हाँ फिर भी अभी दूर है। तो मुझे एक उदाहरण याद आया अजय, जैसे अभी आजकल मैं सुन रहा था, कुछ लोग बोलते हैं कि यार साइकिल ट्रैक्स हैं यूरोप में, तो अगर हम लोग सिर्फ बस वो साइकिल ट्रैक्स बैंगलोर में ले आएंगे या फिर गुड़गांव में ले आएंगे तो अपनी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाएगी। साइकिलिंग जरूरी है और इसके लिए सरकार को बहुत काम करना चाहिए। लेकिन वही बात हो गई ना, क्योंकि हम लोग एक सोल्यूशन ट्रांसप्लांट नहीं कर सकते यहाँ पर। वो सोल्यूशन वहां पर काम आया, उसके लिए और कई सारे कारक थे, कई सारे डिटर्मिनेंट्स थे जो काम किए, तब जाके वो सोल्यूशन काम आ पाया। वो हम लोग यहाँ पे करेंगे तो नहीं काम करेगा। ऐसा पता है हमको, बस लेन्स भी नहीं काम करती, तो उतनी कैपेसिटी नहीं है, तो पर फिर भी बार बार ऐसे सोल्यूशंस आते रहते हैं हमारे डिस्कोर्स।
So what you said is perfect. और हमारा काम है to understand those deeper sources of how good decisions are made. Okay, so how is it that Frankfurt came to the process of deciding to have bike lanes and then implementing the bike lanes? Okay, it's about data, it's about debate, it's about criticism, it's about freedom of the press, it's about the intellectuals, it's about the policy analysis, it's about the working of government organizations and the civil servants. What goes wrong if a civil servant misbehaves in Frankfurt? Okay, all these things. So we have to go after those deeper determinants rather than the decision. You can't look at the outcome and say, I like bike lanes. Okay, so I feel that all over the Indian landscape, we have the wrong theory of how to achieve development in India. We're trying to jump after one cause after another, that, oh, I'm very worried that children don't have enough food. Oh, I'm very worried that we need to improve the status of women. But you've got to go upstream. You've got to go to the root cause. The root cause is that the foundations of the political and economic system are malfunctioning. And we need to create those human beings and institutions and norms and ways in which the society works to answer questions and build state solutions while fostering the freedom of private people. Then that is how you get to an advanced society.
बिल्कुल। तो आपकी किताब में एक पॉलिसी पाइपलाइन का वर्णन है, जिसमें कुछ स्टेप्स हैं जिसको अगर हम लोग अपनाएं तो अच्छी नीतियां बनने की ज्यादा संभावना है। तो ये पॉलिसी पाइपलाइन क्या है, इसे थोड़ा समझाइए ना।
तो इन ईच प्रॉब्लम वी हैव टू गो स्टेज बाय स्टेज। ओके, तो पहला स्टेज है डेटा। ओके, तो तुम्हें लगता है कि नॉर्थ इंडिया में एयर क्वालिटी की प्रॉब्लम है, पहला काम है डेटा बनाओ। Okay, so what is the state of air quality in North India? And so, by the way, funny story, there are government meters all over North India which report air quality, but those meters don't work beyond the number 999. Okay, so when the air pollution goes above 999, the value reported is 999. Okay, so we just don't know what is happening, or the meters are switched off, so you don't get the data. Okay, so the first basic question is, what is the air quality of North India? Or you think you want to do tiger conservation, तो पहला काम है tiger की गिनती करना. So where are the tigers? Okay, is there a single tiger in Sariska or not? One fine day we discover, oh sorry, actually Sariska में तो tigers सब मर गए. Okay, so who are the tigers? Where are they? Can you count the tigers? So पहला काम है data. Okay, you want to discuss the status of women in India? The first job is to count how many women are working, how many women leave the house. Okay, the first job is data. Accurate, regularly measured data is the first foundation. If you don't have the data, everything else will go wrong. Okay, you can't do anything if the data is wrong. Then you can just do any propaganda that you want, and there will be no checks and balances because the data is lacking. So the first pillar is data. Data ke baad aaya the work of research. So, if you have a Diwali in Delhi, does it increase the pollution in the air or not? Okay, who knows? Because maybe at the same time in October, November, the fields in Punjab and Haryana are being burned. So is it because of the Diwali or is it because of the fields burning? We don't know. Okay, so all over North India, there is terrible air quality in the winter months. So what is special about Delhi? Okay, this is the subject of research, that you have to study the data and you have to understand what is going wrong. And you have to develop a theory about what is going wrong. And we need many, many people, many, many experts in the country to build that knowledge, to debate that knowledge, to disagree. And then we will arrive at some clarity that this is the cause, and then you can get to the solution. So the third stage is where people invent a proposed solution, that to solve the problem of air quality in India, I think we need to do X. To solve the problem of tiger conservation in India, I think we need to do X. Or to improve the women's labor force participation, to get women out of the house, to make women first class equals in the Indian society, to solve the nightmare that the women's labor force participation in India today is worse than Pakistan and worse than Bangladesh, we need to do X. Okay, so many, many people should use that data and use that research and come up with 20 rival proposals. And there must always be multiple rival proposals. Okay, if you are in any situation where there is only one solution, then we are in trouble. Okay, one solution is never correct. You need many competing solutions. And then after that, we need a process of public debate, that many, many people should fight in the public domain, where there should be an argument between different ideas. There should be everyday powerful criticism of the government. Because if you don't criticize what is there, we'll never fix it. Okay, if we start praising tiger conservation in India, we'll never make tiger conservation better. So the only path to making things better is to criticize what is there as the status quo. And there should be 10 rival proposals that you should do this, you should do that, and they should all fight with each other in the public domain. So the only healthy public domain is one in which there is a lot of fighting. If you have a harmonious public domain where we are a Hindu joint family and we don't disagree, then you're in deep trouble because you'll never solve problems. It is only by debating and it's only by disagreeing with each other and persuading each other, and some good ideas will bubble to the top and will persuade more people, that we will develop a clarity about what is the problem. And all this has to happen in the public domain. This is not about government. This is about private people. It is, you and I and all of us in the private world, in the non-government world, who have to do all this work of the data, of the research, of the diagnosis, of the multiple competing solutions and the debates of the multiple competing solutions. Now, after all this has been established, we are ready for a process inside government, which I mean both opposition party, ruling party, where they will start debating, they will look at their political constituency and they will look at all this raw material of the diagnosis and the solutions, and they will choose some policy pathway. Okay, let's do X. Okay, but they can never figure out these things if all this upstream material has not been done. Okay, government does not have intellectual capacity. Government cannot think. Government cannot diagnose. Government is just a political system of thinking who is my supporter, who is my enemy. Beyond that, we should not expect intellectual capability inside government. So when the data, the research, the multiple rival competing solutions, and the public debate has not been done, government will never be able to figure out anything. Okay, so then you get to the government process of thinking in a more political way. Who's my constituency? Who's my supporter? Which constituency will I win? Which constituency will I lose? And then governments will take some decisions based on this raw material of the public debate and all the criticism of the government. So lots of people have to throw stones at the government every day. Then the government will get kicked into doing something better, into solving a problem. Okay. Finally, you get to the process of policy implementation, where we are writing laws and we are designing the government organizations whereby implementations will be done correctly. So this is the policy pipeline. And it is unfortunately a pipeline. You have to go through all these stages. You cannot jump to stage 3 if stage 2 has not been done. You cannot jump to stage 7 if stage 1 has not been done. Okay, so this is our depiction, field after field after field in India. We have to get our heads clear and coldly analyze. Have we done the stage 1? If you've not done the stage 1, shut up. For the next 10 years, our job is to do stage 1. Then after that, 20 years from now, we will be at stage 3, and 50 years from now, we'll be at stage 7. It is pointless trying to talk about solutions and public policy and implementation and all that if you haven't done the basics. So we feel that in most problems in India, we are at roughly stage 1, stage 2. We just don't know anything. The knowledge is so badly broken that we will not be able to diagnose and solve problems. So the biggest bottleneck in India is the data and the research. If you want to make a difference to the future of this country, then you need to foster the data and the research. This is the biggest choke point whereby India is not making progress today.
इसमें एक क्वेश्चन है मेरा कि आपने ये जो पूरी पाइपलाइन बताई, तो ये तो बहुत ही लंबा प्रोसेस है, राइट? बट हमारी पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम तो 5 साल या उससे भी ज्यादा, मतलब हर कुछ इलेक्शंस के ऊपर चलती रहती है, राइट? तो फिर पॉलिटिशियंस का कैसे इंसेंटिव बनेगा कि वो ये सब चीजों में, मतलब हम ये जो थियोरेटिकली समझा रहे हैं उसको रियलिटी में कन्वर्ट करने के लिए पॉलिटिकल विल कहाँ से आएगा?
So this is a very tough question and there is no easy answer. So I want to say 2-3 things. First, we are the problem if we start thinking that you should become like Sweden in 10 years. Okay. The moment we put up that as an objective, we have destroyed the entire policy process. Okay. So we have to understand we are 100 years behind. And if we can overcome that gap in 50 years, that's a great achievement. Okay. So look at the time horizons. All the countries that have become great have taken time. Okay. Nothing gets done quickly. So this Jaldabazi that we are doing, that overnight I will suddenly solve the problem, and ye Bangalore wale hai na, that we will jump to hyperscale, get big quick. Is that Jeff Bezos? Get big quick, or get, I forget the name of the book. Okay, that whole Jaldabazi is the problem, where you think that it can be done quickly, or even worse, you think it can be done quickly in pretty unintellectual ways. If you think that by being ignorant and just wielding a big stick, you can do things quickly, then sorry, it's not going to work. So we, the people, are the problem when we establish these expectations that things can be done quickly. No, it can't be done quickly. Like, let's wake up, let's realize that these things are very slow, and let's go about it slowly. And then we, the people, are very important because we shape the expectations, we shape the norms, we shape what is done and what is just not done. Okay, the flaws of the Indian middle class, the flaws of your WhatsApp uncle, are what is shaping the public policy and the political system of India. So the fault lies in your WhatsApp uncle. Okay, so we, the people, have to wake up and think sense, because then finally things will percolate all around the country. Okay, there's no other way. There is no shortcut. We've got to build an intelligentsia that has capability. The normal middle class thinking in India is broken, and that is a problem. So I want to give you an analogy. You're standing in 1920. Okay, think of Gokhale and Tilak and Gandhiji and Nehru and Tagore and so on. Okay, what was their project? Their project was the idea that there is a beautiful synthesis between India and the West. Okay, and their project was that there is a case for Indian self-rule in India. Okay, Swaraj in India. And that we should get rid of the British rule in India, and we should do this without guns. Okay. Now, if you went in a time machine and you had a conversation with them, and you had a conversation with everybody else in the country, then everybody else would tell you that these are just some mad people. Okay, what army do you have? How are you going to challenge the British? Okay, so you will have some people like Subhash Chandra Bose who will try to pick up a gun, and we know with the benefit of hindsight that was a really bad idea. Okay, so Gandhiji's way was the right one, that to do it non-violently creates a civilized society. In every developing country, in every colonial country, when you pick up the gun, you'll never let go of the gun. You'll keep on killing each other. Okay, so the gun is a very bad path. So if you looked at the rich people of the country, you looked at the powerful people of the country, you looked at the celebrities of the age, you looked at the influencers of the age, you looked at the high status people of the age. Okay, all those famous, shining, polished, prominent, successful, powerful, glamorous, high status people were collaborators with the British. Okay, you needed the mavericks, the dissidents, to have the idea that no, we can do this better. And their path is very difficult. Their journey is very hard. Okay, Gandhiji and Nehru went to jail for 10, 15 years each. That is the journey that we are on. We will not get this by chasing celebrity, fame, and success. We will get to this by thinking, by building community, by being honest with each other, and by making progress on these questions.
सौरभ, आप कुछ पूछना चाह रहे थे?
हाँ, नहीं, मैं पूछ रहा था कि ये जो पाइपलाइन में अजय आपने आई मीन बहुत अच्छे जो ये चीजें बताई, खासकर डेटा रिसर्च वाली साइड पे भी हमने बोला काफी सारी चीजें इसमें प्राइवेट स्पेस में ही है, हम आप करेंगे, लेकिन जो फंडामेंटल डेटा है वो काफी जगह पर एक ऑलमोस्ट एक सरकारी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बोल सकते हैं जिसको, जैसे आई मीन सेंसस जो है जैसे बेसिक चीज वो तो स्टेट ही करेगी ना, मतलब, और ये भी एक अच्छी सोचने वाली चीज है कि जो पहला बड़ा स्टेट था, रोमन स्टेट, उसने सेंसस शुरू किया था, तो वो कितनी इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है कि अगर स्टेट को बेसिक डेटा नहीं बनाएगी तो उससे वो चल ही नहीं सकती है। तो उसमें आप क्या सोचते हैं कि हर चीज तो हम सरकार को एक्सक्यूज नहीं दे सकते ना, कुछ चीजों पे तो उसको हमें जिम्मेदारी ठहरानी पड़ेगी।
When there is low state capacity, everything is done badly. Okay, so the government does police badly, the government does courts badly, the government does military badly, the government does agriculture badly, they do food badly, they do monetary policy badly, they do everything badly. Why do you expect them to do statistics properly? Okay, so low state capacity cuts to the bone. Everything is done badly. So let's not have high expectations. Okay, second principle, that to make progress, you've got to ask the government to do less. So you have to pick very few battles. And so my opinion is that there is a lot of opportunity for doing better data in the public domain by private people without the involvement of the government. Okay, so the cutting edge of improving statistics in India is in the private sector. The high quality, good quality data sets are being made by private people. For example, think of satellite imagery. Okay, there is miraculous high quality data being made by NASA and ESA and by private satellite companies. And the only problem in India is that the government will prevent a private Indian company from buying private satellite data sets from abroad. So you need to increase freedom of individuals in India to enable them to pay money and buy satellite imagery from private sources of satellite imagery abroad. Okay, then if ISRO will release some images, that will be good. But the way Government of India works, ISRO releases nothing. So all the good data with satellite imagery comes from NASA and ESA and so on. And that's okay. It's great data. It's all available in the public domain. It does not require an Indian government statistical establishment. Okay, it just requires the Indian government to get out of the way. Don't prevent Indian companies from spending their own money and buying data from a foreign satellite imagery provider. That's all that's required. So can the government get out of the way? The bottleneck in India is neither does the government do its job properly, and then it starts putting violence in front of people who are trying to overcome these things and make progress. So there are many, many examples, but I am convinced that good quality data will only come from non-government sources.
हाँ, नहीं, उसका एक और उदाहरण भी है ना, जैसे जो चीन और भारत के बीच बॉर्डर पे अभी जो तनाव बना हुआ है, इसके ज्यादातर अच्छी सैटेलाइट इमेजरी तो planet.com वगैरह जैसे वेबसाइट्स पर दी, ना कि भारतीय सरकार के वेबसाइट्स पर या सैटेलाइट इमेजरी पर। तो उससे भी पता पड़ता है हमें।
And by the way, this connects to the discussion. Should you be spending public money on ISRO? See, given the broad-based failures of state capacity. ISRO fails on the contracting, it doesn't generate spillovers. ISRO does not release satellite imagery, it does not benefit the economy, and so on. So this makes it more and more concerning that why are we putting taxpayer money into these kinds of projects?
बिल्कुल ठीक है, तो आगे बढ़ते हैं इसमें। और अजय, आपके एक लेक्चर में मैंने सुना था, आपने बताए थे कुछ 7 जनरल पर्पस टेक्नोलॉजीज होते हैं जिससे हम लोग हमारी सरकार को शायद बेहतर बना सकते हैं। तो ये क्या है आपके नजरिए में?
When we think of ISRO, we think of a spacecraft that will go to the moon or Mars, or we think of the camera that will sit on a satellite and take a photograph of 5 meter by 5 meter plot of land. Okay, actually, to run ISRO, you need lots of very simple, boring things, what we call foundational processes. So, for example, think of the HR process. Okay, every organization needs HR. Okay, so the whole labor market problem: how do you hire people? How do you train people? How do you fire people? How do you measure the performance of people? How do you make decisions about promotions, transfers, all these things? This whole thing is called HR process. Okay, and we all know in India it is broken. So every government organization works badly. So remember, the key idea, the brilliant idea, the amazing idea is not that we have a problem in the census of India because there's something unique to census. No, state capacity in India is broken. Everything is broken. So there's nothing special about census that census works badly, because census has the same HR process as everything else. So whether you are RBI or SEBI or police or CBI or Survey of India or census or Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Agriculture, you have the same HR problem. So this is a cross-cutting problem. It's a very basic thing. You need an HR process. So imagine you're a private organization and I tell you that I'm going to give you a very, very bad HR process. Okay, it is going to have a significant adverse impact on your ability to become a capable, successful organization. So, like this, in the book, we have isolated a series of these foundational problems. They are not glamorous, they're not sexy. Okay, so you want to do a discussion of interesting problems, you say COVID vaccination, it sounds very interesting, but actually we will say the problem is government procurement. You don't know how to buy vaccines, or you don't know how to commission research on vaccines. So there's a very basic problem where the whole thing breaks, that we are unable to place orders with Serum Institute or with foreign vendors to get the vaccine. So, it's very sexy to talk about COVID vaccine, but actually something more basic is broken, that we just don't have the contracting capabilities of government, does not know how to do procurement. So for example, you say Rafale, okay, that it's very difficult for government of India to buy planes. And then you can say, I'm a fancy expert on defense. You can have fancy explanations in the world of defense about why there was a Chinese armored buildup in Doklam and the Indian government failed to see it. Yeah, you could do all that. But, we're saying get unsexy. There are boring problems which are afflicting the Indian state comprehensively. So these are like the government contracting process, the HR process, the finance process, the checks and balances surrounding coercive power, the governance process, the board process of government organizations, like this. So in the book, we have built this whole architecture of how to think about these foundational processes. And we want to say two things. On one hand, we want to say, you may think that I'm very interested in health, and you want to make the health of the people of India better. And we will say, very well, you may think that health is very important, but actually, sir, you have to do these boring things. You just have to fix contracting. You have to fix HR. Okay? And upside down, that if you fix contracting, if you fix HR, then you will receive benefits everywhere. That your census of India will work better, your survey of India will work better, your Air Force of India will work better. Not just health will work better if you improve contracting. So we think it's a two-way thing, that all of us should be far more excited about this boring plumbing. That can we do government contracting better? Can we improve the methods, the mechanisms by which the Indian state enters into contracts? It has thousands of benefits. It can be a city of India doing garbage collection. It can be a city of India doing a contract with a private drinking water utility. It can be a government buying vaccines. It can be a government doing a contract with a private healthcare facility, blah, blah, blah. There are thousands of benefits of improving government contracting. So we need to get away from this sexy classification. I'm a health expert, I'm a defense expert, I work on foreign policy. Instead, we just need to do basics, saying, dude, you need to fix your basics. So there are many areas, what we call the foundational processes. We in India need to cultivate the discourse on these areas. We need to prioritize these areas. We need to create expertise and literature on these areas so that we are able to lay these foundations. So then 20 years from now, our successors will have a ghost of a chance of doing defense policy properly.
बिल्कुल, बहुत सही बात कही आपने। ठीक है, अब मैं आगे बढ़ना चाहता था। अगला सवाल मेरा यह था कि कुछ ऐसे उदाहरण तो रहे हैं भारत में जहां पर हम लोगों ने बेहतर किया है कंपेयर टू इन अदर एरियाज। तो जैसे नेशनल पेंशन सिस्टम ही है जिसमें आपका भी काफी योगदान था, और 1991 रिफॉर्म्स तो जानते ही हम लोग। तो उन चीजों में ऐसा क्या था या क्या चीजें हम लोगों ने सही की वहां पर जो जिसकी वजह से वो बेहतर पॉलिसीज थी कंपेयर्ड टू द अदर्स?
So there were two things that went right in many of the success areas. Certainly in the two things you talked about some of the 1991 reforms, and the second was the new pension system. The first big idea is that it's a community project. It's not a small project. Okay, you need dozens of people, you need hundreds of people who are part of the reforms process. Anything that is done by a tiny group under conditions of secrecy will go badly. Okay, so you need a very broad base of people, debate, intellectuals, civil servants, etc., who are understanding and developing the competence and developing the capability. Then there is a greater chance of progress. And the second is that before the policy process began, the early stages of the pipeline were laid. So from the 70s and the 80s, the economists had developed a whole literature on what was going wrong in India. Why did Southeast Asia make progress? Why you should not be pessimistic about exporting from India. Okay, Manmohan Singh's 1964 PhD thesis was about why you should not be pessimistic about exporting from India, and so on. So for 20 years, the groundwork had been laid. After the Janata Party won power in 1977, the first important reforms began about going away from old Indian socialism. And rapidly from 79-80 onwards, we started making progress with higher GDP growth. So these are very long journeys, and we have to build the knowledge and we have to build a large community. Then we are able to make progress in certain areas. When the community is narrow, where only a few people command that knowledge, or when the community is destroyed or dispersed, then you get a collapse. For example, what has happened on the Indian equity market, where the community was destroyed and now there is just complete chaos and all kinds of bad things are happening.
बिल्कुल। और जब मैं इसके बारे में सोचता हूँ तो मुझे अक्सर लगता है कि कैसे हेल्थ, हम लोग कहते हैं कि बहुत बड़ा विषय है, लेकिन उसमें ये सब चीजें जो आपने कही वो अभी तक है ही नहीं हमारे पास। तो हम लोग कैसे बोलते हैं कि ये चीज कर दो और हम लोग हेल्थ इंप्रूव कर पाएंगे, लेकिन कितने सारे जो आप शायद वो पॉलिसी पाइपलाइन देख लीजिए या फिर आपने अभी जो दो चीज कही वो अभी तक हमारे पास नहीं है। तो शायद सोल्यूशन नहीं है हमारे।
तो इंग्लिश में लोग बहुत कहते हैं we want to get quick wins, or there is this phrase bias for action. तो मुझे लगता है कि it's very dangerous to undertake action using the coercive power of the state and using public money when you actually don't have the community and you don't have the knowledge.
अजय, मुझे एक सवाल है जो आपने अपनी किताब में इसके रिलेटेड ही कुछ लिखा है, जो मतलब जनरल लोगों को सुनने से काफी बार ऐसा लगेगा कि वो काउंटर इंट्यूटिव होता है। तो आपने लिखा है कि रूल ऑफ पॉलिटिशियन इज बेटर देन रूल ऑफ ब्यूरोक्रेट। हम थोड़ा सा अभी ऐसा हो रहा है कि हम थोड़ा बहुत ब्यूरोक्रेट ही हमारे डिसीजन ले रहे हैं और एकदम उसी हमें, और मतलब हमें एज एन सोसाइटी को भी और लोगों को भी लगता है कि ये अच्छा है कि पॉलिटिशियंस अपनी पॉलिटिक्स अंदर बीच में ना लाए और किसी को जो पता है पॉलिसी वो कर रहा है अच्छे से, तो ये मॉडल भी अच्छा है, ऐसा काफी लोगों को लगता है। तो आप उसको आपने ऐसा क्यों लिखा है कि हमें पॉलिटिशियंस को ही फिर भी इंक्लूड करना चाहिए ये प्रोसेस में, सिर्फ सब कुछ ब्यूरोक्रेट के हाथ में नहीं दिया जा सकता है, ऐसा क्यों बताते हैं आप?
So the problem is that the bureaucrat has job security and the bureaucrat has no accountability. Okay, so there is just no incentive for an official to do the right things. So, you want the rule of bureaucrats, it's called British rule. Okay? So British ICS officers were ruling India. And I'm not racist, so for me, I see no difference between white people and our people. So just replacing a white person by a brown person does not improve conditions. What is wrong is the unaccountable power of the bureaucrat. And the importance of politicians is that they are ultimately accountable. Ultimately, somewhere, they have to listen to the people, they have to face elections. Now we have many problems in the political system. We need to improve accountability. It should not be so easy to win an election by doing radical extremist campaigning. It should not be so easy to win an election with first past the post elections. There are many problems in politics, but ultimately a politician has to listen to the people, and a politician has to worry about losing elections, and that is better than a bureaucrat who's unaccountable. So political theory में हम ऐसे कहते हैं that there are 3 branches of government and each of them need to be equal. तो ऐसे कहते हैं co-equal branches of government. ये है legislature, that is the elected politicians, then executive, which is the cabinet and the officials, and the judiciary, that is the judges. Okay, these are 3 separate things. They should be equal and they should be constantly fighting with each other. That is a good country. When the 3 start agreeing with each other, we will get tyranny. Okay, we will be oppressed when these 3 start talking to each other in a collaborative way.
Wonderful.
तो
बहुत अच्छा लगा
ठीक है।
अजय, आपने यहाँ जितनी सारी चीजें बताई, और आपकी किताब ने एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण, जिसको बोलते हैं, गड्ढा भर दिया है हमारी पब्लिक पॉलिसी की डिबेट में। और पुलियाबाजी जो है वो हमारी है ही चर्चा, और इसी बात पर कि हर चीज के बारे में बहस होनी चाहिए। और आपने इतनी बार इस चीज को बोला कि जहाँ बहुत बहस हो वही अच्छी जगह है। तो हम अपने श्रोताओं को बोलेंगे, भाई जगह जगह पे पुलिया बिछाओ और बहस करो और हर चीज पे चर्चा करो, और जितनी चर्चा हो, जितना क्रिटिसिज्म हो, उतना अच्छा हम लोग देश बना सकते हैं। ये एक सबसे बढ़िया सीख है आज के लिए मेरे से। और मैं बोलूँगा जिनको भी थोड़ा सा भी गहन इंटरेस्ट है इस चीज में, तो इनकी किताब जरूर पढ़िए। हम शो नोट्स में लिंक वगैरह करेंगे ही, उससे आपकी चर्चा को और वजन मिलेगा। तो आप जूडो के साथ सूमो भी खेल सकते हैं कभी। तो ये आप
तो ऐसा स्लोगन बनाइए, लेट्स डू पुलियाबाजी नॉट हार्मनी।
हाँ, बिल्कुल। और हाँ, इस किताब में तकरीबन 80 उदाहरण है भारत के परिप्रेक्ष्य में, तो आपको कई चीजें जानने को मिलेंगी, और भारत के लिए खालिस भारतीय सॉल्यूशंस क्या हैं वो भी आपको जानने का मौका मिलेगा। तो जरूर पढ़िए। और अजय, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया पुलियाबाजी पे आने के लिए। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू वेरी मच।
धन्यवाद।
Hello, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcasts Network. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet talks to Meeta Kapoor, director of the JCB Prize for Literature and founder of Syahi. They discuss how one can be a published author or get a job in publishing. On HDFC Investverse, Anupam talks to Postcards from Nowhere host Utsav regarding striking a perfect balance between work, finance and hobbies. On the Musafir Stories, we have a special episode as we unravel the popular Madras Music Season, a citywide celebration of Indian classical performing arts and drama. And on Think Fast, Varun and Suchita talk about the arrest of Elizabeth Holmes, world population crossing 8 billion, and India getting closer to being the most populated country in the world and more. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcasts.com. We have some exciting stuff for you. Follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, spread the word. Tell your friends and don't forget to rate and review them wherever you're listening to them. You'll also find all our shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Bumble, Kotak Privilege Program, and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you for making this possible.